Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. From Jerusalem, Rabbi Chaim Richman here together with Yitzchak Ruvain today, the 5th day of the month of Menachem Av, the Consoling Father, 5778. It is July 17th, 2018, and this Shabbat, Parshat Devarim and Shabbat Chazon, the Sabbath of Vision. We begin our program today without our traditional, beautiful music that opens our show, which actually is a particular version of Bob Dylan's Love Minus Zero / No Limits, which has been the opening song of our program for the past, I would say, 11 years. But traditionally, we do not have our music on the program on the week of Tisha B'Av. This is one of the customs of the Jewish people. In the days leading up to the 9th of Av, we diminish our joy, and one of the ways that we manifest that is by refraining from music. There are many laws and customs that have been enacted by different congregations in Israel, depending on one's Community, exactly. That have to do with the days leading up to the 9th of Av. And all of these customs are designed not to increase our suffering or to really decrease our joy either, as much as they are designed to keep our focus on the loss of the Holy Temple, and not to be distracted. That's really what all of these things are about. We are in this particular vacuum. It's a very unusual period of time. This literally a period of mourning for the loss of the Holy Temple. Mourning, again, which is designed to make us motivated to act, to get up, to do something, to change the situation. So that is why we do not have our music today, because we are totally focused on the destruction of the Holy Temple. Not on its destruction, but on the fact that it needs to be rebuilt. That's what this is all about. This year, an unusual configuration that happens sometimes, that Tisha B'Av actually falls out on the Sabbath, and thus it is deferred to the next day, to Sunday, the 22nd of July. The 10th day of Av is when the fast day will actually be observed. And the customs of mourning that normally are in effect on Tisha B'Av, the public customs of mourning, are not going to be in effect on Shabbat, because Shabbat supersedes every fast day except for Yom Kippur. And Sunday is the day that we will observe as Tisha B'Av this year, marking 1,948 years since the destruction of the Second Temple. And I know Yitzchak and I, for example, are planning on going to the Temple Mount on Sunday, God willing. And I'm sure that many thousands of Jews are planning on ascending the Temple Mount in purity and reverence on the day of Tisha B'Av. You know, there are many communities that spend many hours in the morning of Tisha B'Av reciting these traditional prayers of mourning.
Dirges.
They're dirges, actually. They're called kinot, and they are laments over the destruction of the temple. This year, a halachic decision was publicized by Rabbi Israel Ariel, the head of the Temple Institute, when he was asked a direct question about saying all of those dirges versus having enough time to be able to visit the Temple Mount. And he answered emphatically that one certainly is permitted to shorten the recital of those prayers in order to get up off of the ground and go and visit the Temple Mount, because everything has to be given an expression of action. In other words, what's it worth if it's just lip service? If we're just sitting and we're just wailing and bemoaning the destruction of the temple, we have to show that we actually want to do something about it, change the situation, personally. I'll share now with the entire listening audience, and I think I speak for Yitzchak as well. He's here. I don't have to put words in his mouth. I know the two of us, let's face it, we haven't said any of those keynote for years. We don't say them. We get up very early in the morning and we go to the Temple Mount. I personally don't say them because I feel that it is historically inaccurate and disingenuous. I feel that it's disingenuous. It is not authentic.
Not fair to God, who has
exactly.
brought us back
It's like
this place.
To sit on the floor and as a mourner and to cry what I would consider to be crocodile tears and say, God, look, we're so sorry. Please give us the temple. Let us build the holy temple. Please don't be angry at us. We want to change the situation. It's not an honest statement. You know why? Because God gave us the Temple Mount on a silver platter in 1967, and we are dragging our feet. Much as Haggai the prophet chastised the people of Israel after they had already received permission from the king of Persia to rebuild the holy temple, but yet they were very slothful. They were very sluggish in their motivation to get started. So too, again, there's only so much that you can blame God for your problems. There's only so much that you can get away with that kind of chutzpah. It would be a far more honest statement just to say to God, you know what, we're not interested, thanks anyway. No, but to have this whole posture, this whole false pose of saying, oh, please, God, please, let's be friends again. We want to have the temple. Yeah, you want to have the temple, so do something about it. And that's been our theme for the past 30 years, and it remains our theme. The Holy Temple is not about a building. It's not about architecture. It's not a structure. That's not the point.
It's not about to build itself.
It's not about to build itself, but I'm saying it's not, our obsession with the temple is not because it's a beautiful building or because it's some ancient synagogue or because it's some magnificent structure. It's the concept. It's the concept of elevating human purpose towards its divinely appointed destiny. It's the concept of bringing godliness into every part of creation. It's the concept of living in a revealed way for Hashem and doing His will. And the temple elevates all of humanity to that level of recognition and unity and revelation. And that's what it's all about. And unfortunately, as a people, we've become disconnected from that. And that's what the work of the Temple Institute is all about. And you happen to be listening to the pre-Tisha B'Av program, but we can go on and on like this in the middle of February as well, because that's what we do, because someone has to do it, and because we believe, as the Torah teaches, that the Holy Temple is central to the rectification of the human experience and to the redemption. And so that's basically what we're trying to say. And thus, hope you have already been able to spare, I hope you've been able to spare us 1 minute and 14 seconds and have been amongst the 7,000 people as of this moment, as we record, that have already seen the Temple Institute's 6th annual special Tisha B'Av video presentation called The People Are Ready. And
we can play it for you right now.
I don't think we'll play the soundtrack for
if you
people.
Go to YouTube, and in the YouTube search, put in The People Are Ready. It will show up. First thing, it's a minute, and actually, that's a minute 14 seconds. And before you know it, you've seen it. And once you've seen it, you can
spare a minute and 14 seconds for the house of God.
You can do it while we're talking. You can, believe me, you can do it while we're talking. There's actually 2 words spoken in the video, so it's not like we'll be interrupting anything. You do it, and as we're talking...
Yitzchak, do me a favor.
If there's anything significant, we'll say it again.
What are we trying to say with this video?
You know what? This video, and what you said before about the prophet Haggai, and Parshat Devarim, which is what we're going to be reading this Shabbat, all have something in common, and that is the theme of motivation. You mentioned that Haggai was castigating the people who had returned to Jerusalem. They had made the effort to return to Jerusalem, but then they got complacent or whatever.
They got distracted. They got sidetracked.
And so he was saying to them, where's your motivation? And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu, that's what the book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, which we begin this week, is all about. It's about Moshe motivating the people just before they're about to enter into the land of Israel. And that's what this video is about, motivation, about lighting a fire.
I think the video is a very honest statement. Let me explain it this way. We started this series 5 years ago, 6 years ago, with the first Children Are Ready, which was the children building the model of the Holy Temple out of sand on the beach. And the theme of the Children Are Ready, several of those productions over the years, was that the pure, untainted soul of children realizes that it's time to rebuild the Holy Temple. The children grew up. The children got married in the video that we did 2 years ago. And the statement that we're making in this short presentation is the people are ready, because it portrays how the message of the Holy Temple is now something that has seeped into popular culture here in Israel, how it's something that is reflected in the very streets by the ordinary man, how it's something that occupies the attention, the consciousness of people on the level of just the basic foundation of society. That's what this message is all about. And again, it symbolizes a struggle between authority and the younger generation. So actually, for 1 minute and 14 seconds, it actually packs visually a very powerful punch. And I hope you get a chance to see it again, because the reason that we make these videos is because what we are trying to impart to you is that these days of our fixation on the Holy Temple, when the entire, I mean, you're always supposed to be fixated if you ask me, but the point is that these days of Av, when we are all so focused and united on the loss of the temple, crescendoing with Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, the fast day that commemorates the destruction of the Holy Temple, it's not just about, or actually in my opinion, it's not at all about just being miserable, suffering, punishing yourself, going without. It's not Lent, That's not what it's about. It's about just coming to the point of realization that I can't take it anymore. I can't go on anymore. What's going on? How could we live in this world without the revelation of the divine presence? How could we just go about our business every day when the God's basic Bill of Rights is not being fulfilled, the most important commandments in the Torah are not being fulfilled, and the world is totally off balance because of it? So this film is making a statement, and the statement is, don't just mourn and cry. Do something about it.
Or as the video literally does, it takes a dark world, a world filled with darkness, and illuminates it and puts color back into it. And that's what the Holy Temple does by being a vehicle through which God's presence enters the world and fills it with color, with light, with laughter.
A lot of tragedies happen on Tisha B'Av. First of all, the first one that ever happened, we learned about a number of weeks ago in the book of Numbers. It was when the spies returned to the desert encampment. The spies that had been away from the end of Sivan returned on the 8th day of Av, and they delivered an evil report in Parshat Shalach in the book of Numbers, and the people cried for no reason and entered into this national mass hysteria, and God said that this would be a day of crying, and that was the seed that was planted that enabled the temple to be destroyed. And then throughout history, other terrible calamities like the Spanish expulsion in 1492, the beginning of World War I, the day that the Treblinka gas chamber began operating, all of those were on, believe it or not, the 9th day of Av. And so a lot of people, they don't know what to do with themselves on the 9th day of Av. I'm talking about good Jews. They're like, what should we do? Should we read depressing things all day? Because, you're not supposed to study Torah on the 9th day of Av, because the sages mentioned that Torah gladdens the heart. So you're not supposed to be distracted, and you're not supposed to allow yourself to be joyful. So the only parts of the Torah that you're allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av officially are parts of the Talmud and Midrash that deal with the destruction of the temple. You're allowed to study the Scroll of Lamentations and Jeremiah. You're allowed to learn things that are about the destruction and that are focused on mourning. But a lot of people also, they read about the Holocaust, and they even watch Holocaust movies, and they think that you're supposed to just immerse yourself in like Jewish pain and suffering and death all day long, and they think that the more that you do that, the more scrupulously you have observed Tisha B'Av. And I'm not dissing anybody who wants to identify with that and who wants to show sensitivity towards the Holocaust, which is so incredibly important to do. But honestly, that's not what Tisha B'Av is about. Tisha B'Av is about drawing a line in the sand and realizing that we need to rectify this situation, that we need to understand that this can't just be once a year. That's the whole problem. This isn't about just suffering and making yourself miserable over the loss and the destruction once a year. It's about a crescendo. It's about a process. It's just like Jewish history. It's all a process. And when you look at it as a process, you realize that we've come so far. We have come so far. And so too, I mentioned, how some of us, and we're not alone, Yitzchak and I at all, don't recite the keynotes, but rather we visit the Temple Mount and we pray as fervently as we can get away with on the Temple Mount, on Tisha B'Av, directly for the rebuilding. And we vote with our legs by going there. So too, there's a prayer that we say in the Shmona Esrei at Mincha time on Tisha B'Av called Nachem, in which we ask Hashem to console us with the rebuilding of the temple, and it mentions how Jerusalem is desolate and overrun with like the Roman legions, and how it lays in ruins. And that prayer too is not historically accurate, because Jerusalem is beautiful. Jerusalem is well populated, and it is gorgeous, and is the light of the world. So several different variations of that prayer have been written that reflect the actual reality of our day, and they're more of an honest statement, because again, things have not remained the same for 2,000 years. We are seeing a tremendous process. How could you deny that the Jewish people are returning to the Temple Mount and that we are growing closer and closer to the rebuilding of the Holy Temple, when all records have been broken, and the incredible amounts of people, good Jews, pious Jews, that are careful about halakha and purity, more and more are ascending the Temple Mount every single day.
And Jews that are perhaps not as pious, but still make the effort to go up in purity, even if doesn't reflect their daily habits or something. That's another beautiful aspect of what's going on, that people are literally being turned on to the Temple Mount, people who would
That's what our film is about also.
Who describe themselves as not religious or not observant or whatever terminology you want to use, yet it speaks to them, yet the place of the Holy Temple, the place where the Shekhinah dwells, speaks to them. Why? Because it's in their soul, it's in their DNA, it's who they are. And it's been hidden from them. I think that people are discovering it today because it was basically
it's been kept from them.
And
they're outraged. They're outraged that the treasure of the temple and the Temple Mount, which is the heart and soul of what the Jewish people are all about, has been systematically and deliberately denied them.
And left.
And so we have Tisha B'Av, when the nation is their heart is so open. I just can't get over how youth, even what you would consider to be, and this is quote unquote disenfranchised or alienated youth, they make their way to Jerusalem and they spend all day that day in the old city because they know on their soul level that it's the place to be, because they identify with it so much, even if they don't understand it. So the Churban, the destruction of the Holy Temple, has been is this the right word? Extrapolated. It's been like interpreted on every kind of level to include every type of Jewish suffering and misery and agony and punishment and disaster, and that's all true. But that's not the point of the Ninth of Av. The point of the Ninth of Av is one thing and one thing only, and that is that it's time to rebuild the Holy Temple. And this is what the sages say. Every generation that goes by that it hasn't been rebuilt is guilty of destroying it.
So people who mourn simply mourn on the ninth of Av, through the 9 days, without being inspired to do something, anything, even if it's just watching this 1 minute and 14-second video, something in behalf of building the Holy Temple, are a part of a generation, or representing themselves as part of a generation that is part of the destruction, because they're not looking toward the building, they're just seeing the darkness. And unfortunately, that has, as you pointed out, that's become an expression of many well-intended people. But the time for being part, I mean, again, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, we were in exile. Jerusalem was desolate, and yeah, mourning was about all you could do to make an effort.
You just hit the nail on the head. This is the whole show that I want to say, that we've taken the rite, R-I-T-E, of mourning, and we've made it like into the main thing now. But the reason that it was so preeminent in the Jewish mindset over the years is because there was nothing else that you could do but mourn. But now to sit and to say the kinot, to say the dirges, as if we're still in the ghetto in Europe and we're about to go up in smoke, and we have no recourse, and the Cossacks are at the door, it's just not the thing anymore. It's just, that's not it. Yalla, if you want to rebuild. Don't blame God.
Right, and don't bemoan that you're helpless to do anything about it, because you're not helpless.
Because you're not helpless at all.
There's a 1,000 things you can do, big and small, in order to expedite the building of the Holy Temple, and that is a beautiful, beautiful zchut, merit that we have of this generation.
Here we go, Yitzchak. This would be the time that we would be hearing the music,
Yeah.
which we are not doing this week, and we will be right back for the second part of Temple Talk.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Ruven with Rabbi Chaim Richman here in Jerusalem. Once again, no music this week being the 9 days, first 9 days of the month of Av, 9 days of intensified mourning and introspection concerning the Holy Temple that we have not yet rebuilt in our day. Today is the 5th day of the month of Av, 5778. July 17th, 2018, this coming Shabbat, which actually is the 9th of Av, but the fast will be deferred to the next day because we do not fast or mourn on Shabbat. This coming Shabbat, we'll be reading Devarim, the first portion of the book of Deuteronomy, which in Hebrew is called Devarim, which means words, because this book is filled with the words of Moshe that he spoke to the people of Israel over the final 37 days of his life, preparing them to enter into the land of Israel. And today, the 5th day of the month of Av, is actually the yahrzeit, the the anniversary of the passing of the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, of blessed memory. Arizal standing for the Ari,
The godly Rabbi Yitzchak.
godly Rabbi Yitzchak.
446 years ago.
He was 38 years old when he died. As a plague swept through the town of Sfat and took him and many others. And he was actually born in Egypt. And one of his teachers was the great Ridbaz. And then he made his way to Sfat, like so many others during those years. It was right after the expulsion from Spain, and Spanish Jewry found itself on the run, and many of them went eastward from Spain through Italy or through Turkey and wound up in the northern Galilean city of Sfat, which became a center for Jewish writing, wisdom, and mysticism. And of course, the Arizal is, I guess, the Einstein of Jewish mysticism, of Kabbalistic thought. A brilliant, brilliant man, probably the most brilliant man that ever lived. I don't know, can anybody argue with that? And he changed the course, I think, of Jewish life, Jewish liturgy, Jewish thought, Jewish expression, not by creating something new, but by his commentaries and insights on previous Kabbalistic literature and tradition. And some say, even give him credit for being one of the precursors of modern Zionism, in that in his teaching he emphasized action, he emphasized doing things, and activism really is the basic description of Zionism. Zionism is not something foreign to Judaism. It's just Judaism brought back to life, really, and made active again, which is why we're back in the land of Israel, and why we're talking about rebuilding the Holy Temple and not just simply mourning about the fact that it was destroyed 2,000 years ago and we're not in a position to do anything about it, because we are in a position to do something about it.
So once again, you're describing the prophet Haggai, and the prophecy of Haggai that's found in the later prophets of the Tanakh is very short. Mm-hmm. It's only a couple of pages, and it's so incredibly, I guess I would say, chilling almost in a way, because it sounds like it's being said today to this generation. So we explained earlier in the program how he was basically admonishing the people of Israel for not being zealous enough in their rebuilding once they were able to. But there are things here that are said are so amazing. You know, thus said Hashem, Master of Legions. This nation has said, the time has not yet come. But I say, it is the time for the temple of Hashem to be rebuilt. It's like, how many times do people say to us, oh, it's not time for that? Right. And Haggai was going through the same problems that we have. He must have been getting the same ridiculous emails that we get. You know, what are you doing? It's not yet time. And the word of Hashem came by the hand of Haggai the prophet, saying, is this a time for you yourselves to sit in your paneled houses while this house is in ruins? And then the following verses, this is in the very beginning of the first chapter of Haggai, the following verses explain how all the woes, specifically here referring to economic woes, are a result of the fact that the Holy Temple is not standing. So now, thus said Hashem, Master of Legions, set your heart to consider your ways. You have sown much, but bring in little, eating without being satisfied, drinking without quenching thirst, dressing, yet no one is warmed, and whoever earns money earns it for a purse with a hole.
Wow.
So basically,
sounds like modern consumerism.
The sages explain these verses, that why is it that You have sown, but you bring in a little. Why is it that you eat without being satisfied? Because the showbread is no longer on the table. Why are you drinking without quenching thirst? Because the libations are not being brought to the altar. Why are you dressed but you're not warm? Because the Kohanim are not wearing their priestly garments. Every one of these details is a reflection of the blemish of the inactivity of the Holy Temple. And again, why? Because it's tit for tat? Hashem is saying, nah, because I don't have a house and you're not doing these things for me, I'm not going to do it for you? No, it's because there's a balance in the world. There is a spiritual balance, and when we are not plugged into it, when we are not able to conduct ourselves according to the divine mandate and giving proper honor to Hashem and proper recognition and understanding in our own lives how we are connected to Him and connected to each other and what the purpose of life is just to know who God is, then everything goes haywire. And so people are going to say, and I'm sure they said to Chagai, listen, there's the geopolitical reality, it's not so easy, what are you talking about? That was then, but it can't be now, and all sorts of excuses. And so the next verse says, thus said Hashem, Master of Allegiance, set your heart to your ways. Go up to the mountain and bring wood and build the temple. I will be pleased with it and I will be honored, said Hashem. So it's like, what you think you can't do it? Hashem is just saying, go, just do it, just build it. Nike, just do it. Set your heart to your ways. Go up to the mountain and bring wood and build the temple. I will be pleased and I will be honored, said Hashem. You looked for much produce, but behold, it is little. You bring it home and I blow upon it. Why is this the word of Hashem, Master of Allegiance? Because of, this is a verse, I can't even read this verse without this is unbelievable. Because of my temple, which is ruined, while you run, each to his own house. Ouch.
Yeah.
Therefore, because of you, the heavens withhold from giving dew, and the land withholds its produce. You know what? We're so out of touch with all of the spiritual underpinnings of these prophecies, of what we're really supposed to be doing in this world, how the most precious commodity is just to know who Hashem is in the first place. That's what this is really all about.
And none of us hesitate to, we're all fixated on self-improvement and on always upgrading our own lifestyles, our own homes, our own backyards. We don't hesitate to invest in making our own little bubble in the world into a better place for us. And as the world keeps growing smaller and smaller and smaller because of technology, you'd think we'd finally get it, that we're all in this one bubble together, and the one place, the common place that we all share and share with Hashem is the Temple Mount, and that's where we should be making our efforts to enhance and embellish. And if the Prophet Haggai and God's words can say, bring wood up, God's saying, I know you want to build me a temple of marble and gold, but build me something out of wood, and I'll be honored. Start with something. Start with that little bit of effort. And again, I think that's always been our message, and I think that's the message of the 9 days, and I think that's the message of the video that we put out in the 9 days. Once again, I'll plug it this week. This year's video is called The People Are Ready. Just look that up on YouTube and you'll find it. Is that God is honored by every honest effort we make toward doing something. No matter how much we know or don't know, whatever our abilities are, doing something, and that is part of the process that brings it one bit closer to reality. I think that was the message of Haggai, the positive side of his message, and I think that's the message of today. We're in the exact same place that our ancestors were 2,500 years ago. We have the ability. If they could do it, then certainly we can do it. They were 42,000 people.
We're not in the exact same place. We're not exactly in the same place at all. We're much better off because when the original exiles came back from Babylon, the verse tells us there were 42,360 millions of Jews. The majority of world Jewry stayed behind in Babylon, where they had wealth, they had influence, they had homes, they had Torah academies, they had all sorts of jobs. But now the millions are found here in Israel. And we have the technology and we have the ability. and we're independent. We're supposed to be sovereign. That's what we say, and we say the Temple Mount is in our hands too.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta tell you, if we've been talking for some time now in our programs over the recent months about the daily arson attacks from Gaza that have seen incendiary kites and helium balloons. Do you know that every day another 7, 10, 20 fires are started, and
Every day over the past months.
every day thousands of acres have burned of Israeli land, and at the same time there have been regular riots and clashes along the border, and what had been occasional outbursts of mortar and rocket fire by Gaza terrorist groups and cells that has prompted Israeli retaliatory airstrikes against Hamas now has escalated in that there was a significant amount of rockets that were fired over the weekend, and of course more of these airborne attacks. And so consequently, Israel severely limited the movement of goods into the Gaza Strip, with the exception of medical supplies.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, again, the Hamas is calling this a war crime and a crime against humanity, not their destruction that they are wreaking, the havoc and the attempted murder that they are pursuing every day, and that's the way it's always in the press. Also, it's always emphasized in the world press that with Israel's retaliation is what the whole problem is. Forgetting about what is being done, forgetting about the massive amounts of missiles and rockets that are launched into Israel. What catches the world's attention is always Israel's retaliation, which is considered to be the beginning. They forgot what started the whole thing. So in the meantime, there's a lot of feeling in the air, a lot of rumor of impending war with not only on the northern border with what's going on with Syria, but with the Hamas
And
the Gaza Strip. And as we speak, there has been an extensive military activity, drill, call-up, an exercise simulating a war in the Gaza Strip with some of the armored divisions of the IDF. And must tell you that one of my own sons has been called up this week and is in the reserves and is part of this massive exercise in preparing, apparently, for the possibility of war with Gaza.
And when you hear Hamas, know that it is Iran, because Hamas is taking its orders from Iran, and this is Iran's ploy at trying to create more havoc for Israel, to create a second front for Israel, to divert Israel's attention from the north, and to simply get, I don't know what, revenge on Israel. But again, Hamas is not an independent organization. They are funded and are getting their orders from Iran.
I mentioned these kites, with incendiary devices attached to them, and these balloons, and it's it almost seems like a joke to talk about it, like kites and balloons, like this is what this is terror, this is what they're doing, but they have burned thousands of acres of Israeli fields, and they have caused millions of shekels of damage to the Israeli economy. This is a type of war, but now they have come to a new level of I don't even know how to call it. And this is a news item today that a falcon was found with an incendiary device attached to the bird, by a string, and it was found dead, hanging by the attached string from a burned tree, and near the Gaza border, and apparently it was deliberately launched from Gaza to start fires in Israel. And besides the fact that this is pretty horrific thing to do to an animal, to a bird, and it's, by the way, it is a common bird in Israel, the falcon. But if it was deliberately sent to Israel from Gaza to start fires, it certainly is a turning point that they're now using animals to start such fires. And I think I know why they did it. I think it's pretty simple explanation, because the kites and the balloons can only go so far, and they've burnt everything within reach already along the periphery of the border. Therefore, they decided on a new way to try to get further into Israel.
Yep, if it's working for them, they're going to continue with it. And if Israel's not giving them a message that not raising the price that they will have to pay, then they will continue to do this. So it's a tricky situation.
And it's that theme of Korban. It's that theme of fire that destroyed the Holy Temple. It's that theme of the enemy setting fire to the Holy Temple. This is what they've been doing for months now, is they're trying to set fire to us, basically.
And so I would say the proper response would be to build a Holy Temple.
Yeah, I would also say the proper response, maybe even before building the Holy Temple, the immediate response should be to kill all those that are targeting Israel with the intention of destroying and killing.
Yeah.
But that seems to be a matter of some disagreement in the highest echelons between the government and the army.
And even within the government. There's not enough resolve or determination at this point to put an end to this. And maybe they're waiting for the rains to come in another 6 months to douse the fires. But waiting for something to happen, or maybe for things to change, is of course not the message that we
again are projecting. The world sees, and the world's reaction every time Israel does something, it's a crime against humanity. We spoke about this last week. It's a war crime. It's Israeli provocation. And every time Israel does something to defend itself, to try and respond to these acts of terror, they forget what anticipated it. I got to just tell you this one thing. It's like, well, you know, for the past 25 years, the Women in Green organization leads a march around the walls of the old city on the evening of Tisha B'Av. Right. They're going to be doing it this Saturday night. It's actually a very beautiful event, and it is attended by thousands of people who march around the walls of the old city, marking Tisha B'Av in a demonstration of desire to return to Jerusalem, a demonstration of the desire to exercise sovereignty over the holy city and rebuild the Holy Temple. You know that this year the PA, the Palestinian Authority, is actually calling on the international community to prevent this march, because they say that it is a provocation, that it is a step aimed at realizing the sovereignty over Jerusalem, which is absolutely true. But this is the first time that they're actually calling upon the world to stop a Tisha B'Av event in Jerusalem, because it is
because they don't like it.
It is because they're not getting their way.
Ireland will probably go along with it,
and because they are concerned that it will prevent the establishment of a viable Palestinian state, sovereign and territorial, with East Jerusalem as its capital. This stuff is unbelievable. You can't imagine the irony of these kind of statements, right? They are concerned basically because Israel is waking up to the fact that we must exercise sovereignty over Jerusalem in every strata that we can.
Yeah, well, you know, they seem to be put on this earth in order to contradict us in everything we do, and maybe that's because we're not doing enough, and we're not adamant enough in pursuing our sovereignty and pursuing our destiny. So we just have to ratchet it up a little bit higher. You mentioned, I forget what you mentioned a minute ago, Rabbi, but it reminded me of this up-and-coming, rising Democrat star in the Democratic Party named, I think, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, who won an election, a primary for one of the districts of New York City for U.S. Congress, and she has been quoted as being very slamming Israel for the slaughter that she alleged that Israel did when 60 Gazans were killed on the day that the that the embassy, U.S. embassy, was dedicated in Jerusalem, and she was actually interviewed this week, and actually called onto the carpet about what she meant by occupation. But she referred to the Israeli occupation, and she said, well, I think maybe settlements growing
The
while
Palestinians can't get to their
can't get home.
houses.
And when pressed again, she basically said, well, I got to tell you, I'm not an expert on that part of the world. So basically, there's a lot of talking points that are being spread against Israel, that if you want to get elected,
it's incredible because she's just this mindless leftist, just repeating this tired claptrap that is just the pattern of the left. Just bash Israel, just say that Israel's the occupier, and that's what she was doing.
And as soon as she was called to the carpet, she basically crumbled and admitted that she really doesn't know what she's talking about, which actually I see as a encouraging sign, because maybe she can learn a fact or two before she continues. But it's pretty discouraging that the anti-Israel tirade in the world is so at a foment right now that anybody can get in by just repeating it. Well, we're at the end of our time, Rabbi. I wish everybody a very meaningful 9th of Av. Thanks for being with us, Temple Talk.